On the 12th of September this year, Paul Walker would have celebrated his 50th birthday if it wasn't for his crash on the 30th of November 2013. Paul and his friend Roger Rodas, a successful racing driver and financial planner, had both spent the day at a charity fundraiser. It was for Reach Out Worldwide, a charity Paul had founded and worked alongside Roger on. It was an event to raise money for the victims of the devastating typhoon Haiyan, which had tore through Southeast Asia, and the event was being hosted at Always Evolving, which was a performance car shop run by the pair. After spending much of the day hanging out at the event, they headed off at about 3:30 that afternoon, leaving in Roger's beautiful cherry red Porsche Carrera GT. According to sources connected to the shop, Roger's Porsche was having some mechanical issues and was constantly stalling. Based on this, it's assumed that the pair went out on a quick drive to test the car out and see if they could figure out what was up with it. The Carrera GT already had a reputation at this point, after a number of notable drivers including Jay Leno found difficulty in controlling the infamous supercar. It's known by many as the last true analog supercar, a mid-engined V10 paired to a manual gearbox, exotic materials everywhere, and absolutely no electronic stability control. It was a recipe for a legendary car, but also a dangerous one. Paul and Roger sped through Santa Clarita in California. After about 20 minutes, they drove back to the shop. They were heading down Hercules Street in Valencia, less than a mile from the shop, when disaster struck. They were going between 80 and 90 miles an hour through a 45 zone when the pair lost control and crashed. They smashed into a lamppost and two trees, mangling the car into a barely recognisable shape before catching fire. Both Roger and Paul tragically lost their lives in the collision, but Roger was arguably more lucky. He had passed away from the severe trauma of the impact. Paul, on the other hand, was still alive momentarily and was subjected to the blazing inferno which burnt them and the car to a crisp. By the time authorities were able to tame the roaring fire, little was left. The pair had to be identified from dental records. Onlookers frantically looked around for hoses and any water they could find to put the fire out, but it was too late. And with that, the pair's time on Earth had come to a close. Beyond just being Brian in Fast and Furious, Paul Walker was able to offer so much more to the world. Through his relentless charitable work and commitment to car culture, Walker's legacy will forever be a part of history. Roger Rodas is often forgotten in the midst of all this due to Walker being considerably more famous, but it's hardly like Rodas didn't have some astounding accomplishments of his own. He was a successful racing driver, philanthropist, entrepreneur, and a well-recognised, talented financial planner. With a crash of this magnitude with a number of unanswered questions, it's not surprising that the aftermath was riddled with theories, allegations, and lawsuits. Paul's daughter, Meadow, received a $10.1 million settlement from the Rodas estate. This claim was made due to an agreement that Roger was partly to blame for the crash. There are also the Porsche lawsuits. 3 different people connected to the accident all filed suits against the company, Meadow being one of them. The other 2 were filed by Roger's widow, Christine, and Paul Walker's father. Paul's dad also sued the Rodas family in 2014 after claims that they had some of Paul's cars in their possession. Christine lost her lawsuit against Porsche, which claimed that the crash was due to suspension failure. 2 years after Meadow filed her Porsche lawsuit, it came to a close and they resolved the settlement. Meadow's lawsuit was a little different and claimed that her father was trapped in the car due to being trapped by a faulty seatbelt, and also claimed known stability issues were to blame for the crash itself. Interestingly, she also claimed that they were not driving at between 80 and 90 miles an hour, and instead said it was between 63 and 71 miles an hour. And finally, Paul's father sued them over negligence and wrongful death. Porsche still denies any wrongdoing and attributes the crash to the misuse of the vehicle and excessive speed. On top of the barrage of lawsuits, there were still a number of questions around exactly what happened to cause the crash in the first place. Just about every possible cause has been considered, but here are the most notable theories. A law enforcement official put it down to speed alone after they found no mechanical faults or debris on the road. There were also tyre marks from the Porsche down the road which indicated that they were going too fast around the bend. There was also a theory that they had been racing another car down the road when they crashed, but this has been debunked and proven not to be true. Arguably the most important part, which is often overlooked, is the state of the tyres. 2 of the tyres on the Porsche were 9 years old, and even if the tread was fine, it's common for tyres to crack and degrade over time. Porsche recommend replacing the tyres on the Carrera GT at least once every 5 years, regardless of wear. This could have played a big part in them losing control, as the grip provided could have been much worse than expected, making the car very unpredictable. One widespread theory is that these degraded tyres, which were fairly track focused, could have hit a road reflector or cat's eye in the middle of the lane, which could have thrown them off. There is still an elephant in the room though, which is Paul and Roger's driving abilities. They were both renowned racers with decades of experience between them, so many, including their friends, found it difficult to understand how 2 completely sober occupants of this caliber of driving skill could get into a crash like this. Another interesting fact is that investigators found a number of parts missing from the wreckage. It turns out 2 men had stolen parts from the scene and were found and charged accordingly.